Okay, we're on.
All right. Our microphone's on. Welcome, everyone. It is 7 o'clock, and I'll call the Charter Commission meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, we have a couple items of business to get to before we get to the public hearing. And the first is just the meeting rules review, which I had sent to everyone, so hopefully everyone has them. Because you can't have a meeting without rules. Yes.
May I ask if we're expecting Dan, or
Oh,
did we
I'm
get a
sorry,
message that
yes.
he's not coming?
Yes, so Dan Smith and Scott Blackstone are both excused this evening.
Okay, thank you. Just so I can note that in the minutes.
Appreciate it. So has everyone had a chance to review them? Are there any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the rules as written.
Second.
Is that all?
Yes.
Any discussion?
10 o'clock
I've
seems
got to
really late.
compliment you in advance of being able to,
I changed it
no
to
person should be allowed to respond, you know. You said discussion, so I didn't know if that was, should I raise my hand?
we do, yes, we
Okay.
should. Although we haven't adopted the rules yet, so.
Well, I was just looking at the meeting protocol, and I was going to compliment you in advance on being able to figure out the tennis match that's described as to whether you can speak on something a second time before someone else does. But other than that,
Yeah, we'll see how that works out in practice.
Okay.
Yeah. Seeing no other comments? Do we need to call the roll, do you think? No, okay. So just show of hands if you accept the minutes, and thank you. Accept the rules, not the minutes. So the next item is our minutes. And those were also forwarded. And I would accept a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which was May 27th.
So moved.
second?
Were there any questions, any changes?
Nice job.
Thank you, Chris.
Well done, Mr. Secretary.
I will remove the draft designation and forward these to the town clerk
Thank you.
and to Mr. Fournier for posting and doing whatever voodoo you do.
All those in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. So then we can move on. Prior to the public hearing, I've asked our town manager to give a presentation on the forms of government to kick us off.
Sure. It's not only forms of government, there's some other information in there, but the main point is about the forms of government in New Hampshire, just so you can see what is out there, actually. So first of all, I'm going to go very basic. This is the very high view. There are 4 basic types of municipal government in New Hampshire when it comes to cities and towns. First is what they call the strong mayor board of aldermen. It's where the people elect the CEO to run the city, and that's the mayor. And the people elect a representative body to set the policy for the city, which is the board of aldermen. There's only 2 cities in New Hampshire that have this form, and that's Manchester and Nashua. The next is what we refer to as the council manager form of government. The voters elect a legislative body for the city or town, and it's either a city or town council. The head of the council serves as the figurehead of the community and chair of the council. It's either a mayor or the council chair. And that council hires a professional CEO to run the community. It's either city or town manager or a town administrator. There are 11 cities and 8 towns in the state that have this form of government. In this area, they're the cities of Portsmouth, Dover, Rochester, and Somersworth, and the towns of Durham and Newmarket. The next is what we're going to refer to as Select Board SB2, and this is why I'm saying I'm doing the very high picture, because there's some nuances in here. The voters elect a select board to serve as the governing body. They may appoint a town manager or town administrative, chief administrative officer. They do not have to do that. Council manager form, they have to appoint a town administrator or manager. The town meeting serves as a legislative body. Deliberative session is held. People meet to debate and amend articles. People then vote on town meeting day and approve the articles. There are 68 towns in the state that have that. Around here, it's Exeter, Hampton, Rye, and Barrington. That came in the 90s when they were discussed. There was concern over people not being able to attend town meeting for the final votes on items, so they put it on the ballot. They changed the law to allow it on the ballot. And finally, there's a select board traditional town meeting. The voters elect a select board to serve as the governing body as an SB2. They may or may not appoint a town manager or administrator. The town meeting serves as a legislative body. They meet annually to approve warrant articles and the annual budget. That's the Norman Rockwell painting of the gentleman standing up in the audience. Most of the towns still have, and the state still have this, and that's Stratham and Newington, or in this area, that have that. So school government, there's two basic types on the big picture. They have what we refer to as a dependent school district. The people elect the school board, or the council appoints a school board. There aren't any left in which the city council appoints a school board. That went away in the early 80s. I think Berlin may have been the last one. The school board sets the educational policy of the district and proposes a budget to the municipality, who has fiscal control over the bottom line of the district. There are 9 districts in the state that have this. They're the cities of Berlin, Franklin, Dover, Laconia, Manchester, Nashua, Portsmouth, Rochester, and Somersworth. So basically, after the school board's done with their budget in those communities, the budget goes to the city council for approval in one large budget document, which is the city budget. That's why it's called a dependent school district. All bonds also have to be approved by the city council in those communities. And then you have the independent school district, which the people elect the school board. School board sets the educational policy of the district and has complete fiscal control over its budget. Budgets are voted on by the people in either traditional town meeting or SB2, and there are 167 independent school districts. There is one school district that has a charter, and that's the city of Concord, because they have 2 different school districts in the city. And finally, what's the difference between Newmarket school and town government? On the town side, the town has a charter which is amended and adopted by the citizens as its governing document. The town council is a legislative body adopting ordinances and resolutions. The budget is still approved by the voters in this situation. The town collects all funds to be dispersed to the school and county. We are the ones who, as you know, when you pay a tax bill, you don't pay it separately to the school district, you pay it to the town and we disperse the funds. And the town government is responsible for, quote, the public welfare, including police, fire, road, sanitation, water, community development, recreation, public safety, etc. School districts. Unlike this town, our Newmarket, they don't have a charter. State law outlines school district governance and structure. The school board sets educational policy for the district. The school receives scheduled payments from the town for its operations. They don't collect their own. And the school district is responsible to provide elementary and secondary education to all pupils who reside in the district, etc. It's just this, the difference we have is that we control, since we're a charter community, we have control over our own government functions because we can write our charter. The school district, since they do not have a charter, has to follow state law, much like a town, like Exeter would as a town. And this was I was reading a book in New Hampshire, and this was an interesting quote from 1888. There was a court case, and it said, when the population of a place or town exceeds 10,000 persons, the need for that representative system, for the net representative system is urgently felt. And it was by Supreme Court Justice Charles Doe in 1888. So that was already being thought of back then. Cities didn't come around, we didn't have the charter form of governments until the mid-1800s, I believe 1843, Manchester, and then Portsmouth was like right after it. But they said there was a sense in the state that, well, we need to go and ask the people on everything. And the Supreme Court at that time ruled and said, no, there's a point in time when you have to, a representative form of government should be looked at. Again, at this point in time now also, we didn't have, which I'll get into more now, home rule for form of government in New Hampshire. The legislature would give you your form of government. That you, if you became a certain size, the state legislature would approve a charter. You would have no say. Your representatives would say something in Concord, but the average person would not. If you want to stop me, yeah.
I was just going to say, the means of communication and the means of transportation were radically different
Yeah, absolutely.
than they are now.
Yep. So I did want to bring up two philosophies on government, and that's Dillon's rule versus home rule. You're going to hear home rule a lot and Dillon's rule. Dillon's rule, the philosophy is local governments only have the powers explicitly granted by the state. It limits municipal authority and the state control dominates. Common in many states, including New Hampshire. While we say we're a home rule state, we are not. We're a Dillon's rule state. Home rule, local governments can govern local matters unless prohibited by the state, expands municipal autonomy, more local decision making, and is granted via state constitution or statute. So Dillon's rule, only if allowed, so it has to be a law that allows us to do it. And home rule says unless prohibited. Maine's a home rule state, if you want to compare. Unless it's in the state law that says you can't do it, the cities and towns can do it in Maine. Now, I just want to put this in there because I know there's some questions on, why do we do charter amendments? And I think the big thing is it should focus on policy and not personalities. Because charter's about government, so it's not the individuals. Amendments should reflect long-term community needs and not short-term disagreements. Sometimes you hear communities like trying to change their form of government, not because of a philosophy or a review of what their community is doing, but it's a personal thing. I don't like that current Board of Selectmen, or I don't like that current town manager, we need to get rid of that. And it's just one of those things that we should focus on structure, accountability, and clarity, and not who holds the office. And good charter design supports all future leaders, not just today's. So I did want to do some comparisons with the New Hampshire charter communities. So first of all, the populations of charter governments in New Hampshire, the average population is 29,889. Because the largest is Manchester with 116,403 people. The smallest city is 8,734, which is Franklin. The largest town is Derry, which is 34,528, and the smallest town is 9,534, which is Newmarket. But if you look, we would not even be the smallest, we're not the smallest charter government up there. There are two cities actually smaller than Newmarket. Only 9% of municipalities in New Hampshire have charters. That's the list right there. But 45% of the state population live in a charter community. So almost half of the state lives in those communities right there. So I did want to compare on who approves the budget.
Can I answer that?
Sure, go ahead.
I'm surprised by what you just said, and if only 9% of municipalities in New Hampshire have a charter, what governs those that don't?
State law.
Just total state law?
Just state law. Yep.
And that goes back to what you said.
Like for the school district, same exact thing.
Yeah.
The selectmen and,
Okay.
yep. So one of the things is who approves the budget? Because there's questions. Newmarket is unique in the charters because we still have SB2 town meeting. Not for town charters, but for charters as a whole. Of the charters, 71% of the council approved the budget, and 29% the voters approved the budget. You should have all received in your email a spreadsheet, a chart with all this information about every charter complete and a hard copy in front of you, just so you can read it as well. Just to let everyone know that all 13 cities and Derry and Durham have the town council approve their budgets. Only towns can have voters approve the budget. So you can't have, the city of Lebanon actually had a case, I want to say in the 70s, that they tried to have a referendum process. And the court came back and said no, because you're changing your form of government. You're leaving the city form of government and going back to a town, so you cannot have that. Yeah.
When is the last time in the town of Newmarket, the town and town meeting has voted down a budget?
I've been here 13 years and it has not happened. I mean, and to be honest, I've been here 13 years and I haven't had a deliberative session go longer than 40 minutes in 10 years, yeah.
Here's another
Yeah.
question. in your 13-year tenure.
Yeah,
Because all budgetary items in our current
Yep.
form of government go to the town meeting.
yep,
How many votes?
failed, one. And that was this year with the bond for Moody Point's stormwater system.
And that was close.
And it was close.
And that was the first one.
First one in 13 years.
Noted.
John, you're a native. Do you remember the last time? I've only been here for 30 years, so I don't remember.
Maybe one specific item, not overall.
I remember contentious meetings from time to time, but I don't remember
Well, the
anything
one
failing.
probably 10 years ago at the, when the school vote was coming up and, the gymnasium was packed.
That's school, though. Steve's talking about town.
But if you remember correct,
Oh,
immediately
yeah,
after it
yeah.
emptied out, and it was like 3 of us there.
Yeah, but I think the issue is primarily the school bond.
Yeah,
When they're angry, they turn out.
correct. Yeah.
But my question, sorry, go ahead, Russ.
Where the school budget was given to the town council, those 9 areas.
In the cities, yep.
Yeah, you didn't mention, does the town council engage in either approving it or not approving it to present?
No, those are all cities, so the city council has final say over everything.
So the school presents the budget, but it's an interactive with the town council on what
City
gets.
council.
The city council on what gets.
So, for example, in the city of Portsmouth, the school board approves an operating budget. The school district then gives it to the city manager to include in the overall city budget, and it's just another line item as any other department. And the city council votes up, votes down the entire package.
Okay.
And in our organizational meeting, I recall you saying that that would require an act by the state
The
legislature
legislature, correct.
to do that
Yep.
for our town.
Correct.
The last thing I can remember happening, excuse me, what I remember is people adding money to the town budget
That did happen
some time
recently.
ago.
Oh, gosh, I
For
remember
us-
that.
And I didn't want it, we didn't want it.
Right, for one of the social service
Yeah.
organizations.
Well, there was one this past year, they didn't, there was a confusion on some of the funding of a project, and the council and I both said, we don't need that in our operating budget. The municipal budget committee voted and added it back in. We said, we don't need it, and it still passed with it in it. So, yeah.
Yeah, the same thing with the school budget a few years ago. There was an increase in the school budget
Yeah.
to accommodate a teacher who they wanted to retain, the voters wanted to retain.
$80,000.
Were you on the school board at the time?
That was $80,000.
Yeah, Kim was the chair. So that's what I remember. I don't remember things being cut at deliberative session
No, not something
from the
I've been
town
here.
budget.
I would say, though, I do remember, as John mentioned, some pretty significant discussion about people's opinion of what was in the budget, although it didn't result in a cut. And I don't know how, probably getting ahead, I don't know how else.
Just my experience, the one that was, I was just trying to think of a controversial one, was my first year when discussion of the water treatment, whether it should be mixed or separate.
That was huge.
In that, yes, and then we had to, yeah, and then we changed it a couple of years later.
Yeah.
So,
The bottom line is that the
But
town
it's all
budget
passed, yeah.
hasn't been altered significantly in the time I've been the moderator, for
Nope.
sure, which is 11 years now.
So from that, can I infer that the current form of the town approving budgetary items has not impeded the direction of the town or the ability to manage the town?
it has not, if you're, now this is my opinion.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say that is held up is not so much the operating budget. There's two things. One is if you don't have the budget approved annually by the voters, the one thing you're allowed to do is expend emergency monies during the year. For example, a piece of land comes up that the town it would be very beneficial for the town to buy. We could not do it because we don't have the money anywhere to purchase it. If we had if the council also approved the budget, they could do so. And that has happened recently. Something comes on the market and it's like, I really, that would be great for the town and make sense in the future, but we can't do it because I don't have the money with this market. It's not going to sit there long. The second one is, the only thing that we vote on recently for bonds are, except for last year, are 1-in-1s, and it's all wastewater. It's a grant, it's a loan, but it's 100% forgiveness. So it's basically a grant. We could be doing those all throughout the year if it didn't have to go in March. Those are the only two things. Yeah.
But
they don't fail.
And conceivably, though, has two things.
Yeah.
I guess one question: has that once-a-year vote caused issues in the operations of the community, or the government's support to the community?
We have not been able. Have we not been able to react to grants as quick as we could? Yes. That's true. But so have we missed out on grants because of that? Yes, we have. We say we have to come back in a year.
Is there the opportunity to have special town meetings when you need a vote in order
Not
to do that?
with financial ones. You need to go to the court system and get permission to do it.
Say more.
So if it's a non-financial article, and this is for any town, you can call a town meeting by following a state law. If you need to raise funds, you need to go to the courts and ask for permission to do it.
Which court?
The Superior Court, you have to
Superior
petition
Court.
for a special town meeting.
Yeah.
There's provisions in law to do that.
And I can tell you that that's extremely rare. I haven't heard many doing that recently. I don't know if you've heard of any.
Yes.
Yeah. I've actually heard of more people going to the legislature and trying to get a bill changed to allow them to do it than for that. But I mean, it's extremely difficult to be reactive in those situations.
You have to get forbearance from the people who are selling the property,
Right.
that they'll be patient and let you go
Right.
petition the court, get permission to do the special town meeting, schedule the meeting, have the hearings,
Yeah.
go through that. It can take months,
Right.
even if you're going as fast as you can.
Right.
And you just have to hope that the seller will forbear.
How are we allowed to, but when Al and I were on, how are we allowed to buy the Carpenter property? The school could not buy it, the town bought it. It came down to that.
I came out of the open space
I
fund.
think, right, I think it's of some of it, the school district had some money. There was a portion that the town had to buy because of, right, through the open space money.
Yeah.
So part of that land can only be used still for conservation / park uses. That's how they were able to do it. They had some money, but not enough.
The school definitely didn't have enough. We had to vote,
Right,
the
there was-
council had final say in that.
Right, and I think that was it. It was the money was from the conservation.
And impact fees.
Right.
Yeah.
And the town has to authorize impact
Right.
fees.
And I think it was also from the original, that was some of the original bond open space fund that had been passed. That was from that fund as well.
It was pretty,
But-
it was pretty complicated.
But in a
Well, we say
situation,
town, but it wasn't town, but council.
if the school district though had all the money, they would not have to come to the council. They could have just purchased the land.
And
But
has the land ever been apportioned based on the contributions of both, or is it considered all school land? I know a lot of it's wetlands.
I think we're getting off track though.
Yeah.
but the school, they have to have been authorized by town meeting
Correct.
to expend it. Every cent the school spends has to have been authorized by town meeting.
By school district meeting.
Or school district
district
meeting,
meeting.
sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say, going back to structural issues, is not in your slideshow. I think it's had a profound impact on the budgeting process, is the capital improvement plan, which came in and just had a massive impact on the way the budget is structured and put together. It achieves its objective of smoothing out the tax rate and put its on, I think, opinions can vary, and there were some teething pains getting it up and running, but in terms of the budgeting process, it's really kind of simplified,
Yeah, and it has. And
made things more predictable.
And to be honest, too, it could be even more of a tool if we didn't have to, if we were able to say, okay, this year we're going to issue, and this is what the larger communities do, we're going to issue, I'm throwing out a number, $15 million worth of bonds. We're going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then The next year, we keep a level amount of borrowing, and then once the debt's done, you borrow again. So you always are filling up that capital project with debt versus, because for the old time New England tradition would be capital reserve fund. You put money aside and you do something at the end. The problem is, by the time you can fund something now, you're in 30 years, because like a fire, you can't.
A fire truck's
A
three
fire
quarters of
truck
a
you
million
cannot do.
dollars.
You cannot
Yeah,
put a
you can't
capital
touch
reserve
it.
fund for fire truck.
Right, you can't touch it, that's right.
Right, because it's millions at now. Other trucks we do by lease, but we take the money out of capital reserve funds, which we should probably have it as an operating expense, and because it's part of the operating budget.
Yeah.
We are just trying to buy down those capital reserve funds that were built up so high.
So, but I think to Chris's point, the capital improvement plan.
Oh, yeah.
Is not capital reserve funds.
No, no, no,
Those
no.
are two
Correct.
very
It's a
different
planning and
things.
budget document.
And that is something that I think is critical
Yeah.
to our community, and one
With its
that we
own
have.
governance.
Yeah.
And we have, so I've chaired the CIP committee
Yeah.
for the last few years, and it is, since I was on it back when I was on the council, so
Yeah.
now we're going back a decade, been basically serving as a budgetary process.
Right.
When that is a planning
Right.
process. It should be so much more tightly interwoven with the master plan and the planning
We're
process
gonna have a slide.
than as a
here.
budgetary
Explain
process.
that in a minute.
And my comment too, it would be, if it's not now, and I haven't been part of the CIP for 5 or 6 years, but if there could be a correlation between the town spending and the school spending, so that we go after one major issue in the town and one major in the school.
And-
A coherent plan.
Right, and we're lucky.
Exactly. I don't know that, I don't think it's there yet. I think it needs to be.
Yeah, and we're luckier than a lot of communities because we at least talk. And, I know, but in other communities, they'll both say, whatever, I've got to get this, the school district has to get this, we're not the same, we'll put everything out there.
There are towns where town departments don't communicate
Yeah.
with one another, let alone the school.
Yeah.
I'm not exaggerating. They don't communicate with one
Yeah.
another because everybody's got their little fiefdom
Yeah.
and they're in their silos and whatever, and we don't
But,
seem to
yeah.
suffer from that.
I'm gonna ask you to continue.
Okay. The next, talk about the planning. Who chooses the planning board? Of the town, first of all, if you're in a city, the city council has to appoint the planning board. It's a different setup than a town. Of the charter community, the town charter communities, only 2 charter communities elect the planning board, Newmarket and Salem. And Salem just became a town charter last year. They just got their charter. Of the top 45 population communities in the state, that includes all the cities, 75% have appointed planning boards. The reason why I brought that up, somebody once came to me and said, oh, it's rare that planning boards are appointed. I said, no, it's the exact opposite. I just wanted to show that. Zoning board's same thing. You could have an elected zoning board, but it's rare that you have that in the community.
What are the benefits of
Um,
being elected versus appointed?
Benefits of appointed, sometimes people just don't want to put their name on the ballot. Recruiting candidates is difficult. They don't want to have the opportunity. They don't have the opportunity to lose, so they may not do that. You don't know. I mean, we've had situations where we don't know who's going to be on, and we have no say. If you get 2 voters and you can't vet there's an empty seat, you get 2 people voting for him, that person gets elected, and you can't vet the individual. The voters couldn't even get a chance. At least then, I mean, if you had an appointment, the council would be able to vet the individuals before they went on. So.
Would it affect could it affect the number of potential candidates either way? If it was appointed or elected, would it impact the number of potential candidates?
From experience and from talking to other municipalities, you tend to get more candidates when it's appointed than you do when it's elected. And you get more people who may know the background of the issues more.
I mean, I can tell you though from experience on appointed committees.
Yeah.
That Johnson and the Hines, we're on one, we're having trouble getting people on an appointed
Absolutely.
committee. The CIP has appointed at-large
Yeah.
committees. never could fill those roles. So it's not as if there's a magic elixir.
There isn't, and I'm not, and I was
Okay.
not saying that either. I don't want you to think I said that.
Okay.
What I was saying is that in those situations, if you can't recruit somebody to run for the office and they get 2 write-ins and you don't know who that individual may be, versus if the council could try to recruit somebody, or the planning board itself could try to recruit somebody and say, why don't you to consider serving? And put your name in, and the council would interview them and then appoint them. But much like we do for the ZBA. The ZBA is appointed. So the 2 land use boards, one's elected, one's appointed.
Well, the ZBA is a quasi-judicial board. It's got a very different function than the planning board.
Correct, but you have the ability to.
It's got a
elect the
limited
ZBA.
jurisdiction.
But you have the ability to elect the ZBA.
Right,
So just doing that for comparison.
yeah.
Don't tell us that, you'll elect a ZBA.
I know. Municipal budget committees. Only towns can have budget committees. 5 do not have them, 3 do. So of that group, I said 62% NA, no, 14% yes. That's just
Is this elected or appointed or both?
both. Anybody, most of it, like I said, 5, the budget goes, after the council goes right to the ballot.
Yeah.
And you cut out that middle part.
We seem to have everything. We've got
And
SB2, we've got elected
And that's normal.
budget committee.
It's the normal growth of first getting your charter. You don't want to give up all the town meeting stuff you had, but you have to go the next step. So you keep the budget, the town meeting, and then you go to the SB2, and then you keep looking at things. And it's just a normal growth. Even cities didn't change everything, overnight. It wasn't, most of the cities aren't where they are now, where they started. They all change and it grows when it gets old. That's why you have the charter commissions.
Charter was adopted in 88,
91.
91. Okay.
And this one I just wanted to, we were just talking about, is a combined town clerk, tax collector. In towns, you must elect the town clerk. You do not have to elect the tax collector. This doesn't include cities, because cities, again, they're appointed, the only elected officials of the council and some smaller offices. And if the position is not combined, the tax collector may be appointed. So I just did it's 50-50, because it was one of those things that people talk about is who appoints it when it comes to, do you appoint your tax collector and town clerk, or is it combined? So it's just 50-50. If you've separated it, you'd have the one office in charge of the finances and one in charge of vitals and elections. So it changes the offices significantly.
Well, it also changes staffing.
Absolutely. And that is all I have for the comparisons there. As I said, you have a sheet, and my feeling with that sheet is ask me if there's something else you want a comparison, and I can try, I'll find it and I can just add on to that document. Yeah. Any other questions?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Did you have a question?
It's more of a comment. I'm
Yep.
sorry I keep editorializing here. It's interesting to see what percentage are appointed versus elected and which are, but that just tells us numbers that are, not how well they're working.
Yeah.
Not how well they're aligned to our objectives as a community.
Absolutely.
One or the other. So while that's interesting, I don't understanding how they're working for those communities, which maybe when the municipal association comes and talks to us, that might be a good question to ask them, and
They'll
how
be
they're
neutral on that. They'll be neutral because they don't get into the politics of that
hashtag
topic.
helpful.
Yeah.
But I think it also, well, then if they wouldn't,
Yeah.
I wonder if there's ways that we
Yeah.
might be able to understand or communicate with other communities as to hey, which communities have objectives that are close to ours and populations that are close to ours that might hey, how is this working for you?
Right.
Versus how it's working for us.
Is there any other statewide expert on town government? Is there anyone at UNH who's an expert on?
Not that I know of.
Not
Used to-
that.
used to
What
be a
is it? The
gentleman-
Casey Institute.
Yeah.
They study more statewide stuff.
More, yeah, and it's more different states.
Yeah.
There used to be a gentleman who started a consulting company that we used, Municipal Resources. He's retired. I don't know if he's back up. I know he lives in the Carolinas, so I don't know if he's around.
We know.
Yeah. But, yeah, he would also know it. He came to the last charter commission, John Jutton, and spoke the same night. And came up with a lot of history and things that they've tried to do. For example, there was at one point in time you could have had a representative town meeting in New Hampshire, and nobody ever did it though. Like Massachusetts has.
Does MRI exist as an entity anymore?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There are assessors,
Yeah.
and they do recruitments.
Very, very different focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Russ,
No,
I
I just had a
apologize.
quick, when you say CIP and committee versus planning board,
Yeah.
you mean it's the budget committee that reviews the CIP or the town council?
No, there's, in, the state law allows either a CIP committee to be formed, to look at all the forms and create a document that goes to the council and the planning board. Or, since it is actually a planning document, the planning board in most communities creates the CIP. Because it's a capital improvement plan, and that's what, the reason why we have to have a capital improvement plan is because that determines our impact fees, which is brought forth through the master plan. It's actually it's closer aligned to the master planning document than it is with the budget documents.
But the committee, it's, the CIP approves the CIP, or?
No, first of all, CIP is not a thing, there's a capital improvement committee. The CIP is the plan.
Gotcha.
The CIP is either approved by a committee or the planning board. And that's it. Then you have a capital budget, but that's separate, and you justify it through the CIP.
But currently, I would say what we have is a capital improvement plan committee
Right.
that is serving as a function of the budgeting process,
Correct.
not of the planning
Correct.
process. Which I would
Absolutely.
love to see our charter address.
Absolutely.
I get that one.
That's the disconnect.
Yeah.
Right.
It should be that the committee should be presenting this is year one, this is what you should be looking at. And it's determination of the council at that point, yay, or the voters, yay or nay, can we get that, can we do that? And that's what, Durham,
That's why I was bringing up the issue to get
Yeah.
the clarity, because I was chairman of CIP, I was on the budget committee, and we presented the CIP to the town council, which I assume is the same way it's being done, whether we change it or not today.
I think the CIP makes capital reserve funding endorsements that
Recommendations.
goes to the town manager that then goes
I
into
have
the
to
budget.
determine the bottom line of the budget.
So it doesn't even go straight to the council, let alone to a planning board
Right.
to talk about
I mean,
planning.
they have the document, the CIP committee,
It ends up with the council.
right, it ends up with the council, but that's the planning document. The budget document's the capital budget that's included in the operating budget.
And that comes from the budget committee.
No, comes from the town manager. Oh, I was like, I didn't know we had a doorbell. It goes to the town manager, to town council, to budget committee, to voters.
Can I just say that for people at home, this might be very confusing,
Yes,
this discussion, and maybe this is something that we can have outlined,
absolutely.
like in a one-page or a flow chart of some kind, so people can understand
The
it.
capital budget, capital process?
The capital,
The integration.
Sure.
the integration of this process, because my view is the capital review process is a critical
Yeah.
process for us. Because it has a profound effect on the tax rate in the long run and kind of how the town goes about achieving its mid and long-term objectives
Absolutely.
to maintain services.
And I think it was an issue a few years ago that we got the schools finally put together and report to the capital improvement plan committee in order to be able to have their budget approved, et cetera.
Right.
In order to participate in impact fees.
That's exactly it.
It was not to get.
Right,
Right.
It's only impact fees.
right.
And not a part of the charter.
It's state law.
Yeah.
So my friendly suggestion is that we have some kind of a document outlining the capital budget development process.
Yep.
If that can be done, I think that'd be helpful for us and for the people at home to
Sure.
see. Thank you.
Yep.
Great. So with that, I'd like to open up the public hearing. So all I ask is that you come to the podium, state your name and address, and tell us what you're thinking. Just
I'm Alex Capron, 7 Moody Point Drive. I have a question to follow up on Mr. Nazzaro's questions. Are those of you who have served on the Budget Committee aware of a sense in the budgeting process that you want to anticipate voters' reactions to the budget that's proposed? And if so, have there been circumstances when that has caused an anticipation of a problem and a change in what might have otherwise been desired was made? That is to say, it is true that the voters approved the budget, but is that because the committee has done a good job of anticipating, or maybe a more than good job, has over-worried about something that they think should happen, but they think is unlikely to be approved, and they want to avoid a situation where it would be disapproved? And this is an empirical question based upon your experience.
I mean, I'll chime in. I think that that's true at all levels.
Right, I do as town manager, I don't bring things.
Yeah. I mean, the budget, whether it's the town manager or the budget committee, I'm not sure that the budget committee really plays that role so much. I think it's probably more the town manager and the school district, and the council, in my experience.
Yeah. Do I,
Yeah.
So from the council, and I was most recently on the school board, and I know we very closely watched, hey, like approvals of budgets have been shrinking, like the numbers. So I think it like really drove us to be like, we have to have a very tight budget, recognizing that. So I think that there was on both bodies a sense of like, if we cannot push too much or the voters are going to say no to it. So the budget being voted on created a downward pressure, I think, on how much we were willing to put into a budget.
I can tell you, in this whole school building process, it was very focused. We came in at, 39 million a year. Prior to that, it was a $55 million for one school. And I think the reason that it was successful was just what you're talking about. You know, it's, we want to live in a mansion, but we can't afford it, sort of.
I raise this not because I think there's anything illegitimate. In some ways, it's exactly as it should be. But it means that the data that you can gather from the fact that budgets are approved is perhaps more limited than might be suggested by the kind of shrug, well, why are we taking the budget to the people if they always approve it? Well, they always approve it because you anticipate the need to have their support.
And that's why the planning process is so critical, whether it's the master plan or a capital improvement, so that the budget is tied to an objective, to a long-term objective, or some identified need of the town that we know is either present now or is going to be present in some time. So it takes the pressure off the budgeting process per se. If there's a master plan, then you can fit the budget within that framework. The way I look at it, that's good planning. And then if there's an acute need, an emergent need, then we can address that as it comes. But it's Steve's job full-time to identify those emergent needs before they become emergent and have a plan to address it.
I think because my line of questioning was, I think in alignment with where I hear you coming from, and that is the town voting on budgetary items causing the town government to not be able to function, as opposed to like creating this balance of downward pressure on budget, but still allowing the town to maintain what we need to move forward.
Thank you.
What we don't see is a reduced demand for services. People expect a high level of service, and in my opinion, they get it. And we don't see people saying, don't bother plowing my road, don't bother paving my road, defer it for another 2 years.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen.
Right.
Steve will tell us if he's ever experienced that,
No.
so.
They just want it to cost less.
Yes.
They want you to do it, but they don't want to pay for it.
I want the same price for that 20 years.
Anecdote to that is, my time on the council, we always realize that we don't put enough money in the budget for roads. We never have for 20 years. We had a UNH study, but we don't dare put it in. We just don't, it would be a shock. So, yes.
Well, and there's been a lot of focus in water, right? Water is everything. So investment in water is always a good investment.
Anyone else who's, just approach the mic.
John Carmichael, 44 Elm Street. Where are you in the process? And how long do you think this process will take? I mean, we were involved with the master plan, and that was months ago, and we were all sitting around talking about different projects and proposals and whatnot, and just wondering, what is the projection of this commission?
Thank you. Yeah, we have a very specific timeline, actually. So our work is,
This is our second meeting.
yeah, right, yeah. So we're in the very beginning of the process. We had an organizational meeting 2 weeks ago, and this is our really our first meeting. And sometimes it feels a little preliminary to have a public hearing before there's really anything to present, or for people to respond to. But it's a way for us to gather initial information. We will have more public hearings as the process goes on, and our meetings will always be open to the public, and we will have public comment, certainly, but this is a little bit of a different format. So by October 30th, we need to submit our preliminary report, and then it has to be submitted to the Secretary of State and Department of Revenue by November 6th. So we would basically wrap up, so then it gets approved by the Secretary of State, I think.
The RA, Secretary of State, and Attorney General.
Right. And it gets reviewed by our attorneys in the meantime,
And then it would go on our ballot for March.
if we make any changes.
Right, we might not. But I would anticipate at least, minor changes. We might not be changing our form of government, but, we'll probably be making some changes to the charter, I would anticipate.
Would it go on the ballot one way or the other if we wanted to keep the status quo?
No, I think
By
only if we're
amendment.
going to make changes.
Yeah. By amendment.
And I believe the last time we had a charter commission was 12 years ago, and we had multiple
13
amendments.
questions.
Were they individual questions?
Yes.
They were, yeah. Yeah, that was a long ballot.
God, I forgot.
Yeah.
If you were to do a wholesale, this is our new charter, it'd be yay or nay. Versus if you did amendments, it'd be a series of them. So if you were to say, we're gonna do, actually, I think since we adopted a charter, there probably 99.9% of the time would just be amendments. Because I'm trying to think of some other communities that had them. Sometimes they'll just say, small things, but as long as you're not changing the basic form, it's amendments.
Thank you. Any other? Nope.
Thank you for having the meeting.
Sometimes we just have to be patient and wait.
George Wellen, Chandler Drive. Is the intent just to amend the charter, or are you thinking of revising how it's governed? How we do our government? And we just had an explanation of 4 different styles of government. And I'm confused if we're just trying to modify, amend, or we're really thinking of governing. And one of those questions, and I'm sort of ignorant on this, what is the difference between a town and a city? I mean, Franklin's smaller than Newmarket, and it's a city. So that's my question, are we thinking of moving, and maybe you're not, moving to a city as versus to a town? What's the overall intent?
So you have your.
Well, just one thing,
Yeah.
number one, it's certainly not the 9 of us up here making that decision, and it's coming up on the agenda, hope you folks stay and all the people watching. We already have a subcommittee, we have a survey that we want to get out to residents, we have a meeting, a subcommittee meeting this Thursday night to say, how do we get the word out to you folks? Do we have it at the library, do we have some here, do we put it on the blinking lights, because we want to hear from you, it's not 9 of us saying we're doing this, we're going to listen to our constituents. So I think it's important everyone knows that we don't know, we want to hear from everyone else, what should we do? Correct.
Exactly.
But I think, I mean, and we have a charter commission, anything's on the table, but we had a charter commission 12 years ago, and we just kind of amended a few things around the edges. So, like, we're not saying necessarily anything major is changing, but like hearing from the community and hearing how the town is helping, like how we align to supporting the master plan, like, it opens up potentialities, but like I said, history would say edits tend to be the majority of things.
What was interesting to me is 775 roughly voted that we should have a charter committee, yet when we came up for this election, 250 people showed up. So 750 or 770 wanted one, but only 250 cared who was on it, so this is kind of a
There's a lot of
interesting
reasons.
guy.
That's what we got here.
I know, this is what you get.
I'm going to deserve that comment.
So,
George, you asked a question about city-town.
Yeah.
He's going to answer that.
So what's the difference? You can call yourself a city and have 5 people, you can call yourself a town and have 40,000 people like Derry. It's all what you choose in your charter. It's whether or not, the difference is, do you want to have a strong mayor and have an elected chief executive with a board of aldermen? Do you want to have a board of directors as a council and they have to hire a chief executive with a manager or administrator? Or do you want to keep with the state statutes and have a board of selectmen and you'd follow the state law in that situation? Population has nothing to do with the form of government.
Does one give the individuals in the town more, I'm going to use the word power, say instead of...
Yeah, representative form of government is exactly that. It's like Congress and the state government. You elect a representative that you hope would make the best decision. Town government is the pure democracy of voting up and down the budget. The people get to vote on most everything. Yep.
so rather than,
Now, Bush.
is there something I said?
It's getting popcorn.
So rather than look at things in terms of structure, I think some of the issues I can foresee us discussing are the budget committee, because it's increasingly difficult to get people to do it. And I think Russ can attest to that. Have you been on it with 2 votes more than once?
Well, I've been asked to rejoin it by writing, yes.
So what is the role of the budget committee going forward? And having been your moderator for 11 years now, every year there's fewer and fewer people at deliberative session. Town employees outnumber residents at deliberative session pretty consistently now. There's a couple of different ways to interpret that, and that gets back to John's point of we need to hear from you. Being the optimist, I interpret it as people are pretty satisfied, so they don't turn out. When they're angry or they're unhappy, they turn out in big numbers. So how do we interpret that when literally 10 people show up at deliberative session to spend $15-20 million? I don't know how to interpret that. We need to hear from you, whether that's satisfactory or not, whether that's a product of SB2, and what would it mean to go back to an open town meeting if that's something that we want to do. Would that change anything? I don't know. These are the kind of things we need to think about, and we don't know the answers. We need to hear from everybody who has an opinion.
Chris, so like as moderator, I've been to those deliberative sessions. It's like a handful of people at them. But the turnout for those, for the second half of the town meeting, for the votes, what do those tend to run?
They tend to run in a range between 8 to 15%. Typically, we average around 12%. So, 1,000
So if it
people
was
to
a-
turn out.
If that was at one time, if those people showed up for the deliberative session and that, there'd be 1,000 people in a room making these.
In principle.
In
I mean,
principle.
Hudson has a traditional town meeting. They held it in multiple buildings with video cameras all at the same time. I can't say that Hudson is better or worse governed than we are. It's a 30,000 population.
On the flip side, Salem just did the opposite.
Salem just did the opposite, right. They went from a 3-member board of selectmen for Salem to a charter and their town council form now.
Yep.
So they've, anyway.
Chris Carmichael, 44 Elm Street, Newmarket. This may have been said and I wasn't paying attention, but is there a state statute when you are a charter town or a charter community that you have to review it every so often?
I thought we had to do it every,
We never amended the charter. There was discussion at the last charter commission to put it in every 10 years. It would be a trigger that you would have a vote to have it form a charter commission. It was never put in, but it feels like every 10 years we've almost had one, because there's questions about just to review where we are since we've had a charter. There was 91, I want to say 2000,
2003.
2003, then 2013, and then this current one.
Okay.
So it's almost every 10 years.
Okay,
But
so-
not because of state.
Not because of, no, but it just happens to seem like it. Yep.
Okay, it kind of grows
Yep.
to that. Okay, thank you.
We can have them more often if people want,
Absolutely.
if the voters, someone petitioned warrant articles, we could do it every year. But it hasn't happened.
There's a reason for that.
Steve referred to this, it's an evolutionary process, you know. The governance structures evolve as the town evolves, and the challenges that we face are, the regulatory environments in general for water, sewer, things like that are much more complex now than they were 20 years ago.
And this is my local government nerd part coming out. So all the cities that I talk about, except for Franklin and Lebanon, at one point had 2 houses in all their government. You had a board of aldermen and a common council. Aldermen were the Senate, the common council was the House, and the mayor was the president.
Good Lord.
And the common council, if you had a joint session, that's when you sat as city councils. So that's how cities grew, from being, and the common council was supposed to be the town meeting, and the aldermen were supposed to be the people who double check it before they vote on it, and then the mayor was the executive.
I don't want to prejudice Wham for that.
It's all where powdered wigs.
Back to my nerdiness. The last city in the country got rid of that like 10 years ago. It was Everett, Massachusetts.
Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
There's something to be said. I'm sorry. There's something to be said for, like, we're having trouble getting people on ballots, even filling appointed committees. But there was a contested race for the Charter Commission. So when there's a thing that, like, drives people to want to run for something, something caused that many people to put their name in the hat. It makes me wonder, like, what is it that drives people? There's a question there that I'm curious about to help inform how we're filling other committees.
You and I
That's a
are
good
in the
point.
same spot. I don't know, we've talked about it individually about how do we get people to get involved, and, you know, a lot of us, I think, enjoy it. The pay is great. But I think that if we can somehow, through the charter committee, address that, I think that would be well thought of. Yeah.
The time commitment is different too.
Yeah,
You
that's
know, knowing
Right.
that it's a finite amount of time, it's, less than a year, really, versus a 3-year term on the
Yeah.
council.
Well, maybe with the 300th, it'll be time to reboot the patriotic.
That's right. Some vim and vigor in this community.
Oh, we can just find ways to make people angry.
Just gotta really.
Typically, that involves me talking. So,
Great idea.
Any other comments, questions? All right, then I will close the public hearing at 8 o'clock.
If I could, I thought the input was really helpful tonight. I mean, I hope to grow as a member of this committee by hearing public comments. It was very helpful.
So when we had our charter commission 12 years ago, and the initial public hearing, there were 4 of us who served on that charter commission. And the initial public hearing had 4 people come, so we're at 6.
Yeah.
Feeling good about
It
that.
helps to get a text.
Yeah.
That's true.
Seriousness, it helps to get a text about it.
Yep.
I don't know how many people got texted, but it's true.
There's a return customer from that first one too, right?
Could you,
Oh, right.
John Carmichael spoke
Yes.
at that one too.
could you comment on that again? You received a
Yeah, I don't
text?
think I know.
Yeah,
I
I
did.
got a text,
A couple days ago.
a week
Oh,
or so
couple-
ago
oh, okay.
that there was a meeting tonight,
Yes.
and that they wanted public comment.
And it came from the town?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what, okay.
Interestingly
We have that
enough,
ability now to
I didn't know
text.
you were up here, and
Oh, really?
downstairs, the sign doesn't talk about this meeting, by the way.
It only says the planning.
So I stood downstairs watching the sign go through because I thought of it, and so I had to find my text again. But it's not on the, your,
It's a good point.
downstairs.
Double check that.
Okay.
They fix it.
Yeah. I don't have an issue with the one up here, that's why. Yes.
Steve, that was what, both email, and that's one of the confusing things, both email and text, because I know I got an email.
We have a new system we upgraded about a year and a half ago to something called Civic Ready. And if you subscribe to general notices, like if you want to get, there's a list of things you can get. You can get news on rat, news from police, not emergency, fire, not emergency, DPW, not emergency. You subscribe to that. If you do that on certain items, can receive text, calls, emails, Facebook posts on those things. If it's an emergency, we can reach everybody. So if with landlines, and you have to sign up for a cell phone number.
That's great.
If someone wanted to do that, how would they do it?
NewmarketNH.gov, and it says sign up for announcements.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to move on to the rest of the agenda. And the first thing was the Charter Commission timeline, and we talked a little bit about that. I did have a document that I forgot to forward from Terry, just outlining in more detail what the timeline will look like. The reason I put this on the agenda was really to talk about our timeline of work and how we're going to organize the work that we do over the next months. So, Phil and I chatted a little bit last week, and one of the things that we talked about was, kind of front-loading this initial portion of our work with information gathering, and figuring out who we need to talk to and getting some of that in place. I know that Chris already reached out to NHMA. They're going to be at our July 8th meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I should say, sorry, Councilor Nazaro, or
Oh,
Commissioner Nazaro.
Commissioner, oh yeah.
Commissioner Hawkins.
How formal are we here?
So we have that, reaching out to, and who else we want to reach out to, I guess is the first question, and then getting those scheduled. Before we start going piece by piece, because we have some big questions that we have to grapple with. I think first and foremost, the planning board, the budget committee, those are big pieces, and then we can go through with a fine-tooth comb over the rest of the charter, or if anyone has, pressing issues that they want to talk about before that, I think we can do that as well. So, I'll open it up to see if, yes.
If I may, to expand a little bit on the NHMA, who I reached out to the day after the last meeting, what I asked them, this is Steve Buckley, he's the Legal Services Counsel at NHMA, he's been there forever, he's invented municipal law, basically. asked him to come in to give us an overview of charter governance and just latest developments and issues they're seeing with respect to municipal governance, putting an emphasis on budget committee structures and budget development structures. He said, okay, let me know if there's any further direction that you want me to address, and I'll do that. So if there are additional specific things we'd like Steve to address, we can discuss it tonight, and I'll communicate that to him. So, I'm done talking.
Okay.
Everyone's staring at me.
Well,
Are there other,
does CIP come under the budget, not budget is separate in other towns? I'm not as, I know Steve tried to give us help that says it's either the committee who does it or whatever.
Yeah.
But you have planning, you mentioned the budget, I'm assuming that includes CIP, and that role, whether it's in the budget committee or not in the budget committee, whether it needs to be identified separately, but that certainly is part of the conversation tonight.
From NHMA, like asking them that question, or?
Yeah, well, from that and from how other towns deal, as we talked about it here, it seemed it's a great process to have, but then it's a complex process of how it gets processed to the voter.
So I'm making a note to pass along, and I'll put it in the minutes, to pass along integration of CIP into the overall budgeting and planning processes, and how different towns may address that in their charter.
And maybe, may I? And maybe how those that run it through a separate committee versus a planning board, like how that impacts the process and the integration with both planning and budgetary processes.
I'm making notes, I'll put this in the minutes and I'll pass this along.
Thank you.
I'd like to have people just get a quick look at the minutes.
And has that changed, just as an aside, because I remember I was CIP for what, 7 years, and was chairman or whatever for a while, and we were kind of an outgrowth of the budget committee.
It's still the same, still the same.
Okay. It's not part of the planning process, because we never interface with the planning committee other than to ask for input.
I might say functionally it is not, but like factually it should be.
I understand, that's what
Yeah.
I'm bringing.
When I was chair of the CIP, I went to the planning board, and they were kind of like, what are you doing here? Right.
Yeah, the only thing that the planning board gets is the planning board member on the CIP
Right.
gives a report at the meeting. They're not focused on CIP as a task. They're focused on, land use and all the statutes around that and all of our municipal code around that. And then the master plan. Those are their main focuses.
Okay. And not only in HMA, but if you need any other communities to come in. For example, I know of like a planning director who the CIP is under the planning department, probably one of the best planners in the state. He could probably come and explain why, or the staff could. And versus if I know another large community that it's a CIP committee. What's the comparison? Why do you do it the way you do? That any other communities you may want to have come in, let me know and I can reach out. Because I already know I've gotten volunteers from now he's the town manager of Salem, but at the time he's the assistant, but he was the staff person to the commission at the time. So if anybody has the most recent research, it'll be them.
we can do meetings over Zoom, right?
No.
Like, no, not us.
Oh, no, they can be in.
Invite-
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Did you want to say something?
I'm a little bit confused. So what we're trying to do is identify major issues that we consider major issues that people can come in and talk to us about. Is that the goal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Major issues and to get, I think, different perspectives.
Okay, so a couple of thoughts. the issue of community participation. Is that something we should focus on? Is that a charter commission issue? Does, we've identified it as an issue, is it something that we could use some help
I think it is something we could use some help on for sure. Whether or not, how it fits into the charter.
That's my point.
I don't know.
I'm not sure it
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, I'm
That's-
sorry. This is there's a good, who's the survey committee?
Russ and I.
No, your reach out, public, your outreach.
We're the communications committee.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Survey,
Surveys, Dan, Tony, and I.
okay.
Yeah.
The town of Salem did a few surveys. One was like, why didn't you go to deliberative session?
Yes.
Why did you, sort of asking people the questions that you want to find out, and they did it, they did email surveys, and they got a good response. I mean,
That's our
it was
next
interesting to see.
agenda
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
It'll start that conversation anyway, I think.
as another thing, just to get updated, if I remember back several years ago, we asked the school board and the town council to get together in a joint session and to share. And we thought we were establishing something at that point that never had been done before. And I don't know if that has carried on.
We do annually meet,
Whether it's
We-
been productive.
We put that in the charter.
yeah,
I mean, that was something that we did.
As an aspirational thing.
yeah.
It happens.
And it does, and with any group dynamics get involved, and some years you may have very robust conversations, some years you're checking the box to have the meeting.
I've
So,
got some thoughts about that,
Yeah.
but again, the other comment I would make on information is, somebody, maybe it was Stephen Buckley, forwarded us the, was it Bo?
Bo went through the review.
I don't know if you folks have had a chance to listen to it, but it is everything that we're talking about. That's their first charter commission,
They didn't even have a commission, they just were seeing if they wanted to go that next route.
and it was excellent.
Yeah.
And it talked about communication, if somehow, well, here's my suggestion, listen to it, and think if after you've listened to it, think about whether it would be worth getting them in here to talk to.
I
thought they
think
did.
Steve was actually on that committee,
Steve,
Buckley.
yeah, Steve lives in Bow.
Right, I think he was on that charter
The
review
guy,
committee as
the
well.
guy in charge of that committee was Peter Emsey, who's
Yeah.
been the moderator there for 35 years. He's a retired attorney. I bet you we could get, I know Peter very well.
That presentation it's
Yeah.
unbelievable. It's everything we're talking about. So again, my recommendation is to see it and then
Yeah.
perhaps invite them in.
Where was that, Al?
It was on a
It was on the
letter
website.
from
I don't think Russ
Stephen,
saw it either.
it was on a letter from Stephen Buckley,
I can forward the email,
and it said
or
if
the address, yeah.
it said if you're interested in
Yeah.
more information,
Oh.
hit this, which was the Bow presentation. I've already spent an hour and I haven't even got through it yet, but it's really, really
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that something we can get distributed to the commissioners? And
Absolutely,
we
we
did.
can do that.
I'll
The-
link to it.
I missed it.
how long is
It's
it?
a link to a website.
hours.
Okay.
What I'm going to suggest is, if you send it to me, I will put a link to it in the minutes.
You sent it to me.
I sent, oh, that's the thing I sent you. All right, that's the thing.
How if I
Who's
send
up
a
first?
blind copy to the commission as a
That's the
whole?
thing, it's on the NHMA website, but it's
Yeah.
behind you gotta log in. So what I was gonna do is try to download the video.
You don't have.
You don't have to, it's the Bow website.
It's
Bow-
the Bow
town
website.
website.
The Bow Charter
All you
Commission
do is hit his letter.
Yeah.
Where it references it, it comes right out.
All right, if it's on the Bow website, then let's put a link to it
And
in
that's
the
why, and
minutes.
that's what I'd probably send you the Bow and as well as the Salem, because Salem already has all that, the data sitting there from their own too.
Really well done.
Yeah.
That's what-
Sorry, Russ, go ahead.
No, it was just the website that I tried getting in, that Chris said log in, and I didn't know if we
Yeah,
were
that was a
allowed to log
different-
into it.
I'll check the Bo website, because what I sent you is from the NHMA, and it's
Yeah.
behind it, you gotta log in. I didn't realize that at the time, so.
I would be interested hearing from the chair of the budget committee and the planning board
Yeah,
to get an understanding of the current landscape right now. And I know we've got members of the committees here, but just, I think, having them come and just speak to us, I think would be helpful to understand impacts of like people not running and as well as I would love to hear from the town planner.
Yep.
Similarly about that and about, like, all that master plan work that's gone on. It feels like there's a lot of understanding of what the community is feeling and directionally where the community wants to go, and how can we use that to inform how to align a form of government or government systems through governance structure that helps support execution of it.
And is there a separate group for CIP these days, or is that?
There is, I don't know who the chair is anymore. I was the chair because I was the school board rep, and I'm not on the school board anymore, so I don't know who it is.
If we're talking about invitees at this
Mhm.
point, school board members, town council members.
The chair of the school board's on our committee, Dan. Is
Yeah,
that-
that's great, but I think for input,
Hmm,
it'd be wonderful to,
and the council, yeah.
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 is Scott still on the council?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Definitely the planning board and the budget committee to hear what's working or not, what are their perspectives on how valued they feel and what we can do to,
Well, that's why I was asking whether there was a specific person to reach out for CIP, or we do that by the budget committee, by asking them, where is CIP?
CIP is independent, so
Yeah,
It's really
they're-
Bart.
yeah.
Bart's the person that keeps that thing moving.
So I'll reach out to Bart, the chair of the budget committee. Who is the chair of the budget committee? I mean, I can look it up, but, yeah, okay.
we've only had one meeting, I can't,
that answers the
Alright.
question.
I don't,
right
I'm
there.
trying to remember if we
Like,
even,
that's that
yeah.
look had $1 million
Yeah.
spent right there.
In poker terms, that is a tell.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll reach out to the chairs of the planning board and the budget committee and Bart and get those scheduled. I think we can probably do 2 in a meeting easily, so we'll work on that.
And council and school board.
The chairs, is that, I mean,
Well-
the chair of the school board.
Is here.
Yeah.
I mean, I think anybody on the town council that would love to come and give us, I think that would be wonderful.
And you could have, so Gary was the last chair. He was chair for like 3 years on the school board in a row. So
Oh, right.
he might be a valuable perspective,
Yep.
just having been in that role for that long.
Yep.
That's the budget committee.
Oh, okay.
No one's designated as chair.
That's why I was, wasn't sure.
Yeah.
It's a triumphant. They have 3 people there to chair.
I remember the
It'll be a
old days.
toss-up.
I remember days where the town council, we were worried about getting the budget through the budget committee. It wasn't
Right.
the voters that
Yeah.
concerned us,
Yeah.
it was the budget committee.
The school became an issue for 10, 12 years, I guess. that-
20.
I've only been here 20, so yeah. it's probably, and that polarized the town, as we all remember. And after that was finally resolved, I think that's what settled down, a lot of the issues.
This might be like a unique subgroup, but people who are newer to run in the community, like newer members of the boards, newer members of the council, like what drove them to run? Like I think there's something that's getting people not running, and understanding that, to understand appointed versus elected, like, I don't have the exact question yet, but it feels like maybe it's just a survey to people that are serving or have served, that to get an understanding of what is happening that is putting downward pressure on people's willingness to put their name on a ballot.
Have you read a newspaper in the last 5 years?
Yeah,
Or watched the news?
Yeah.
Or read the internet?
yeah, maybe it's,
I mean, I think so much of it has to do with the media landscape too. I'm convinced of it. And I've said this, a bunch of times in a bunch of different meetings. When I started on the council, we had a reporter sitting in the audience
remember that.
at every meeting.
Yeah.
At every meeting. And then before I was on the council, it was me and the reporter in the audience at every
Right.
meeting.
Now he's the vice chair of the council.
But we don't get media coverage. People don't know what's happening in town, and it's not, this is a discussion that we had last night as well. It's not I don't think anyway, it's the town's job. You need to put information out there, but there needs to be that third leg that is criticizing and maybe not criticizing, but reporting on in an unbiased way.
Somebody told me
People
that we
making
should.
the news can't
Somebody said
report
that we
them.
should start the town should start a newspaper, and I said, absolutely not. That is one of the fundamental things of this country, that the government does not from the news. They need to be independent. But if you asked me 20 years ago if I would have thought all these municipalities would have had either on staff or contracted out communications people, I would have said, you're crazy. And we all do now.
Well,
I
this,
don't think anybody covers Newmarket, do they?
No.
To begin with.
This
But,
is officially-
that's right, almost every municipality now, unless you're Portsmouth or Dover, in this area, you may get an article here or there. If you don't submit it yourself.
Yeah, and I think you also have to recognize, I think COVID created a fulcrum for change that blasted everybody into thinking differently for a period of time. And what's grown out of that is I think we're still struggling with it. I mean, you don't have newspapers the way you used to. You used to get the New York Times all the time. Now you have to say, let me go on 14 different websites and people
Try to
are
triangulate
motivated
it.
to do that,
The makeup of the town has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
You don't have the, people that were here 100 years and 12 generations, there's less and less, and I think those people, speaking for myself, certainly all the things I've done over the years, they're of less buy-in, they don't,
Is what?
less buy-in, I think.
Mhm.
I mean, think of the old days, the Blanchett, the Fillions, who was on the select board when we had
Oh,
three, and they
yeah.
went
Yeah.
to all, it was
The Langs, the
long-term
Fillions, you can name
families
them. Yeah.
on the nature, Hilton, on the Nature Conservatory Commission, and.
The Hamels, the Shandas.
Yeah, I mean, they're names that have been here forever, and great for new people, love them, that's great, but I don't know that the buy-in's there they're not invested as much. You don't want to give back maybe because maybe people didn't help you, or but just my own.
I can say anecdotally that my mother lived, I grew up in Connecticut. I lived here for a long time. My mother decided to retire to this area, so she moved to Epping. She didn't vote in one municipal election. And she considered herself a pretty, she was aware and she was invested in politics, but not in town politics. And she said, I don't know anybody. Why would I vote in a town election? She lived there for 10 years and never voted once in a municipal election. So I don't think that that's uncommon. I think that idea of, maybe I'm here, I've only been here for a few years, I don't know who these people are, I don't even know what the town council does.
I heard a similar thing today from a couple, because today's Maine's municipal election day. A bunch of people in Maine they said, I've never voted in a municipal election. I'm only voting because they said they're going to cut my school budget. And I got to make sure it passes.
The irony of ironies
Yeah.
being the votes that you have the most
Yeah.
ability to have an impact on are the local ones.
I was just gonna say the same.
You get 8.
Serving on the town council, you really can do stuff.
Yeah.
So,
You mobilize 20 people into a town meeting and you can wreak havoc on this.
Well, yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So,
Well, I
But it
think you
doesn't
should
have to.
also add
No.
to that list the committees that actually are fairly full. So if you look at Arts and Tourism,
yes.
Conservation Commission, Energy Environment's been a little bit up and down. We've had times where we had more people, but a lot of that is driven by people recruiting people to serve on, like the committee heads taking it upon themselves to seek out and invite new members of the community
Right.
to join those
Absolutely.
committees,
Yep.
and that is an entry point to town government. So we did have 2 people run for the planning board. You know,
Yeah.
we didn't have nobody running. We had 2 people on the ballot. So,
Back historically, the budget committee was the gateway drug to get on the town council.
Exactly.
If you know how the budget gets put together, you know everything you need to know, because that's, your values are expressed there. Joe, you remember this. You were on the budget committee, wasn't town council back in the early 2000s.
I've always said that, and I say that to people, that budget committee is a great place to start, because you get to meet all the
Right.
players, and you get to see where the money
Right.
goes.
I remember I started, and then there was a year I became first loser when, as I called it, during the school, issues and stuff like that.
So, but now we have the Facebook pages that let people know, I'm using the term loosely, know what's happening. And I'm not on Facebook at all anymore because I think it's terrible, but that's how people get the word out about stuff, rightly or wrongly, but that's replaced the Village News. That was, you don't remember this is back in the early 2000s. There was a little newsletter that Suki Casanave used to put out. A little 3 or 4 page thing. That's how I got on the town council. There was an advertisement in the Village News. The Newmarket Tomorrow Committee went down to town hall and signed up for it. But that's long gone, obviously.
I know this could go on all the time, but my sense is if more responsibility is put on the committee itself to solicit members to
Yeah.
join the committee, the better we'll do.
Newmarket is really committee heavy relative to its size. The town council appoints a lot of advisory committees. I think it's great.
Yeah, and I know the council's gone through them a few times and said, okay, we need to chop some back.
Yeah.
And what happens too is, and this is not just a Newmarket thing, if you have a lot of committees, you water it down. Well, I don't need to serve on the town council, because I can serve on the budget committee, and I don't need to be.
I'm interested in this issue.
Right, I don't need to go all in with the council. I just go with the budget committee.
Right.
And so that's why something may get watered down if you have a lot more. If you have focus, you focus, you'll get elections on certain committees. The other thing that you've seen in local elections is the lack of knowledge of what the local government does. You're getting a lot of people running for councils and select boards for national social issues, which you have no control over. None whatsoever. But they run for that yeah, you have the right to have the opinions, but the town council in Newmarket's not going to change that kind of thing. It's a more of a run your town kind of situation.
Let's say hypothetically you had a town that where the selectmen took a vote to eliminate art.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, not that actually happened, because it did.
Yeah.
But they have voted to eliminate all public art for national social policy reasons. And then you end up getting yourself sued faster than you can blink by the ACLU and everybody else you could think of.
Right.
And then you backtrack as rapidly as possible, having enriched a bunch of lawyers, for example, which I'm all in favor of.
But that's one of the things too. It's a lot of the councils, they're running for different reasons.
Correct. It's a different environment. You wouldn't have thought of that.
Right.
10, 20 years ago.
Right.
One of the things I like about Newmarket is that we have not yet voted to eliminate public art.
Not yet.
no, but opposite direction. We've got more public art than ever before.
Yeah.
No, but
Anybody who
thank you
thinks I'm
for
kidding can
pointing
look
that
up the
out.
town of
Yeah.
Littleton.
And I
Yeah.
will reach out to those committees as well, because I do think that that's important. And I know the chair of the Arts and Tourism Committee is a force to be reckoned with, so, and a go-getter. So I think that she'll probably have a lot of information to add. And I say that with all, like
Yeah.
I
We can make the Charter
Have a lot of
Commission a
respect.
tourist attraction.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's move on though, because it's getting late. So we do have 2 surveys that I forwarded to everyone. So one was to Newmarket residents, and the other was to elected officials. And so this is what we came up with from the survey committee. So we'll start with the Newmarket residents one. If anyone has any things that they want to add or things that they think shouldn't be in there.
Rather than, the very first question, rather than say, how aware are you? I think I'm not sure we're getting useful information out of that question, so maybe it should be, how much time do you devote in a given week or a given month? Try to get something objective out of it rather than a level of awareness.
How much time, say that again.
I'm just brainstorming
Yeah.
here. You know, how much time do you spend in a given week or a given month? You know, what's the word I want? Reviewing information or tracking information about what's happening in town government. Get something objective rather than what is your level of awareness? Because somebody's somewhat aware, might be somebody else is very aware. I'm not sure you're getting useful feedback out of that question. So I just raised that. I'm getting a lot of quizzical looks. It's not
Well, I just
unusual.
wonder if it's the word aware
Right.
that you're looking to change. Do you know about, or do you know how the town runs? If that's, I don't know.
Yes,
if
no,
that's-
I don't know. I don't care. I mean, then what are your responses going to look like?
It's a tough one to quantify.
How engaged do you feel? I have a bias towards questions that are very objective. Because if they spend 2 hours a week, to me, that suggests that they're very aware. And if they spend 0 hours a month, then they're not aware. What sources do you use? Or communication channels? I'm jumping ahead. So, am I making sense to
Yeah,
anybody?
you are.
So I hear you, but I still think we're getting a lot of people saying they spend 0 hours paying attention to it.
Well, right. That's useful information.
But they may still be familiar with the form of government, just like, I don't have any time to commit to it.
The roles and responsibilities of your town government. How aware are you of the roles
This is not
and
like,
responsibilities?
this is how aware are you of the structure of it, not how aware are you about like what is on the agendas at this point in time.
They may say, I know about my road getting plowed, so I know about town government, but I don't know how it functions.
I mean, I would tell you there was a period in between council and school board where I had like very young kids, and I was like, I would say I'm very aware of the roles and responsibilities, but to ask me what was on any agenda, I'd be like, I have no idea. Like,
Well, we could ask a
How I feel
question,
about
a
it
separate
now.
question, a time question, Chris. We could ask that separately.
Yeah,
Like, how much time do you spend?
yeah. I mean, my broader question is, I'm not sure what the utility of the information we're getting out of the first question.
Well,
What is it telling us?
What I think we were trying to just understand is, more to the fact of, do people know what the structure of town government is currently? Do they understand the roles and
I
responsibilities?
like that question.
Yeah.
Better than this question. Do you know what the roles and responsibilities are of the various boards, committees, whatever, of town government?
Okay.
That's kind of, to me, that's more likely to elicit information that's going to be useful for us to respond to in some way.
Just a yes, no.
What is your level of, do you know?
And then, what would, you want quantifiable responses for them to give, so I'm very knowledgeable, we could sort of go from
Somewhat
very
knowledgeable,
knowledgeable to I
slightly
know nothing,
knowledgeable.
or something like that.
Not at all knowledgeable?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think
Yeah.
that,
Somewhere in that range there.
I like the way
Okay.
you phrased it better,
Yeah.
Patrick, than,
Okay,
for myself, than the way this is currently phrased.
okay.
Is somebody making a
Work on
note?
that.
So, I'm sorry, do you know the roles and responsibilities?
Of your town government working committees.
Yeah, I like that, I just like that question better.
And then buckets to capture underneath it, and I thought there was some change of phrasing.
Yes, so very knowledgeable to not at all, basically.
Yeah.
They're very somewhat.
Yeah.
So, with the last set of questions, I'm sorry, should we go in order, or my questions are on the last set, so.
The last set of this.
Involvement and barriers, the last section in this survey.
Okay, yep. Yeah,
So
we can do that.
it's set up with, have you ever served on a town board or committee? And then what reasons have you not been involved, and what might encourage you to be more involved in town government? So that's involvement, but there's also participation. I guess maybe that's an engagement and participation section. I'm trying to because there's two things. Why are people not running for office as much? Or why do they run for some and not others? And why are they not showing up at meetings and
Right.
deliberative session? Which I guess that we get to that in the participation section. So,
Yeah.
sorry, I talked myself out of my comment.
Yeah, I think we covered it there.
Yeah.
We've got deliberative vote,
Yeah.
attend meetings.
So I
Right,
guess the
think
question
that's
is,
pretty
there's,
specific, right?
there's a
Like,
question, I guess, the open-ended question at the end of involvement. What might encourage you to become more involved? Could we have an open-ended one in the participation one of what might encourage you to be more participative?
Yeah.
Great idea.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm going to call that 7A.
What might encourage, is that,
So, can I just clarify, who's going to make these changes? I don't have these
Yeah,
original.
I can make them.
All right, I'm going to make a note in the minutes.
So then do we want to add something where we're capturing how they have their awareness and understanding? So we ask them, how have you learned about the roles and responsibilities? And it could be they say, I went to a meeting, my neighbor told me about it. I mean, what I'm curious about is, what do they know? How did they learn it?
Is that 8?
Do you think the communication
In the first section
channels-
here, under awareness, if how did they learn something about, we're asking them, how did they learn whatever they know about town government?
But in the communication channels, you don't think that that's covered there?
Yeah, I'm looking at question 8.
Yeah.
Oh, you're looking at 8.
and
Okay, where do you often, yeah, I guess it does. I'm just,
Not
yeah,
easier to-
no, I got it.
Yeah.
I
hear what you're
recognize we say
saying.
town charter, but we talked about the school and there is some relationship and interchange even though it's separate. And I don't know if that's something that we just want to say a deliberative session, or are you inclusive about how the tax rate and that there's two organizations, and do you want feedback on that?
I think it'd be a lot to put in a survey.
Okay?
That's just my,
Yeah,
Well, you're
Gonna keep it
allowed to have
simple.
your opinion.
yeah, I think it's,
And I'm not saying that there should be a campaign, but to ignore that we're asking for input that may or may not have some impact based on our discussions on the cooperation between the town and the school, or how many people are aware these days that they're two separate entities, other than your voting.
right?
I will add that the participation challenge, the school board is not immune to that. There is
Oh.
the number of people that were out here, it was 6 times the amount of people that showed up at the average school board meeting.
like nobody?
Nobody.
Yeah.
And the same challenge is communication. How do we get the word out? There was so much dialogue that we've had here over this.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not unique to Newmarket either.
No.
Like, it's a challenge everywhere. I mean, we could add, how often do you attend or participate in the town deliberative session? And then how often, because that could be two different, have a separate question that addresses the school deliberative session.
Yeah, and the reason I bring it up is because I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
we're saying the texture in the town has changed, certainly everybody knew 15 years ago or 20 years ago when all the school issues were there, that everything was separate. In the last 5 to 7 years, and add COVID and turnover and all that, I'm just not sure how related people are to understanding how the town operates, where there was incentive to do that, 10 years ago. So I would maybe use the survey to reinforce at least that there's two entities a little bit, or at least in some questions, and you may have people say, you mean there's a school deliberative session and there's a school budget versus I don't know. I just haven't heard that.
Yep.
They are still
So
held
I'll
at
add
like
that.
the same time, like
We-
against each other,
We
which is
changed
helpful.
that, the budget year and the joint deliberative session, about, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Yeah,
Yep.
Oh, my
but you
God.
do have people come to one that then leave for the next one.
Oh, yeah?
It's gotta stay 15
Any
more
other,
minutes.
Well, then it got to the
Changes
point,
to this?
the meeting lasted 15 minutes. You
Anything
hang
else on
around
the
for the
survey?
second deliberative session.
No.
what did you ask?
My question is, the survey looks good, we made some changes. How does this get circulated to the community?
We're gonna go through the town manager's office.
Outstanding.
Because well, I should say. I
Steve's gonna
think
fill them
that-
all out.
No.
We will go through
She's gonna know.
your office, obviously, to do an online survey. And then we do need to discuss whether or not we will have paper copies, because I think that we.
We
need
did the
them.
last time we did a citizen survey, we did have paper copies available. I think we got 2.
But what do you
Um,
think if we brought some to like the senior center?
A
or the
library.
library?
You may, but
No?
what you're saying though is the percentage you're getting is still, actually, I'd say we got a lot of seniors who did it online. We asked the percentage of age and it was very high for 65 above. So that was fine. The technology's not an issue.
Okay.
But you also got to think that, I'm trying to think how to say this. I can't remember my old survey classes, but you have a certain amount of people. Just because you increase it, the percentages isn't going to change. You're still going to have, I don't think you're going to miss a complete
The
group of
numbers get
people.
bigger, but the percentages don't change.
Thank you, yes. You're not going to miss a group of people by not bringing those out there. By making it available, yeah, some people are going to come down and say, you know what, I can't do it that way, I'd rather just hand it in, and we do put those in.
Great.
I think it's a common question in communication and publicity as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we just don't have that, when Steve says that we can notify everybody in town on an emergency basis. But if not, it's kind of voluntary to sign up. Do I want this information? Do I want that information? I don't think people say, is this an emergency? Should they get a survey through the emergency network? Probably not, but
Isn't that part of Thursday? Why can't we get creative? We're gonna send out sewer bills and water bills. It's in an envelope you could put a survey in. I mean, I think
Actually,
if
it's
we say
not.
only electronic, I think we're saying that anyone who wanted to write comments and fear the not being able to be anonymous won't participate.
Well,
Right.
just for the public, it's more anonymous if you do it online because it goes through so many different things. We don't know who fills it out versus we know somebody passes in a hard copy. Second, there's certain things we can't put in billing. So like tax bills, we can't put anything in except the tax rate. Water and sewer, I have to double check. I believe it's only encouraging saving money and conservation. So doing that is difficult as well. I mean, we could always do a mailing for a postcard mailing saying, if you'd like to fill out the survey, do it this way, or you can come to the town hall. We got
A QR code.
We have QR code posters throughout town. We put those up for the last one, and we didn't. The number of people who filled it out did not drop between the first time we did a citizen survey and the second. It was probably, if not higher, we did more online.
And the results get collated and reported how?
It's as soon as we're done, you turn it off, and all of a sudden the software now prints out the reports.
Like SurveyMonkey or something
It's
like
absolutely, SurveyMonkey or Microsoft Forms does it real quick.
that? Okay.
And you can generate reports.
Yep.
Yeah. Would it be helpful to put any demographic information on it, like to ask an age?
Yeah, we could do
question?
that, and, I mean, we have the generic one on everyone that we always ask.
Okay.
Like age, education, own rent, income, those kind of things we can ask.
Yeah,
I think
that's good to
I
have
think
that.
I think so too.
Very relevant,
Yeah, I think so.
very relevant.
Okay. And then the second survey that we had was for the elected officials.
Is there current and former?
Yes. And I think we want to reach out to as many elected officials as possible. And we could add appointed.
Appointed, yeah, I think appointed would be helpful as well.
So
And I think
I'm
that,
saying elected, but I mean boards, people who serve.
I think when we think about the demographic data for here, like where you want an appointed or an elected board, God, I had another one.
And is it Newmarket specific?
Yeah.
Because when I read the first one, it says what board, and there could be people on community church boards,
No,
I
this is
think
town
community,
and,
town.
town and,
and maybe this is also where you want to say town or school.
And that one you may want to consider more interview type ones. Not just the, why'd you get, that way you can ask, well, why did you get done? Was it because of this? Was it because of that? And you can get some more.
Yeah. There
Yeah.
are some
Yeah.
open-ended questions.
I think a question on what years did you serve? Because I think like there's questions in here about like, was it too much, too little, about right time? Like that might vary year to year. There were some years I know that you're like, you're in it to win it, like, oh yeah, you're long meetings.
Yeah, the meeting, when I first started, meetings would go till 10:30.
The sewer,
Yeah.
all the ones, we had Saturday
Yeah.
meetings, we had several, yeah.
Never mind.
The good old days.
We all have war stories. The Newmarket Town Council, when I got on it in 2000, the first year in particular, we'd be here till 11,
Yeah.
12. I get up at 7 and drive to Concord and go to work. When I got on the school board and I got to be the chair, 9 o'clock, that's it. If we're not done, we're coming back tomorrow night. Guess what? We finished by 9.
Yeah.
Which we are quickly approaching.
Yeah.
I'm stalling till we get there.
60 seconds,
Yep.
Sorry,
So,
I can't help it.
so are we good we'll add that demographic
Yeah.
type information to the board and committee one?
Once we get this information, who's analyzing this data?
Well,
We'll give you the raw data. Well, every time I've done it, I just print out, here's,
this is the percentage
Can
of.
you email
SSA.
it, not, like, so
Oh, yeah.
are you printing out a report or the raw data?
no, the report. If you want the raw data, I mean, you can get down to that as well, spreadsheets of that, but.
I just like, if we're asking certain demographic data, like, are there correlations between, like, age and education that leads to people? Like, I'm just trying to think of, like, how can we triangulate?
We could give you I'm 90% sure you can get the Excel
Yeah, like,
spreadsheet.
I'm not looking to code an R for this thing.
Yeah,
but,
yeah,
like, I'm,
Yeah, let's keep our eye on the ball, what the
yeah,
objective is.
What the
Right.
objective is, like,
Not to get,
I think if you see something out of the ordinary,
we're not
then we can do.
we're not running a
okay.
whole
Yeah.
new AI to analyze this
Yeah.
thing.
When you look at number 5, I think the current term lengths for elected officials, do we have a difference, or should we say they're 3-year terms in every, how?
You actually don't have any say over that.
oh, that's state law.
Yeah, the 3-year
No.
terms.
The moderator,
The moderator does, but the council, everything else is a 3-year term.
For every committee, and et cetera?
Well, not
Which is
every,
fine.
not appointed committees, not one that are created by the council, but statutory committees under towns, unless it's set by statute.
Well,
You don't have any say.
Yeah, and you talk about educating, just that question and discussing it here, how many people are aware, and maybe in here, that it's a 3-year term? That's what we're not just saying, do you know what the term is of any elected official, or whether they're different or the same? So we may be informative. I'm just saying in a couple of these questions that say, do you think the 3-year term length or whatever? That's the reason I brought it up, because I wasn't aware as you said, it's clear, if you're elected, it's 3 years. and
In
if you're
towns, yes.
appointed-
Yep.
And I think most committees, not all, are typically 3-year terms.
3-year terms, yeah.
So I think it would be interesting, it won't, even if we can't change anything, it'll be interesting to get that information and say, if that's a barrier, you know, or if it was, you know, if people felt like, oh no, it's too long. Not that we can do anything about it, but it'll just be
I mean,
interesting information to have.
There is, that's,
Yeah.
city councils are 2-year terms or 4-year terms.
I think it takes you a year on the council to figure out what you're doing.
Absolutely.
No, agreed,
100%.
at a minimum.
And in my case, 3 years.
Can you also include somewhere, Joe 13 Grateful Drive. Can you also include in there just something, how do people get their information from?
It's in here.
Yep.
It is in there?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. It's in the
Citizen survey.
Citizen one.
It's
Yeah.
topic number 8.
So the citizen survey will go to everyone. And then this one will just be sent to, we'll have to generate a list. That'll be,
One that goes to everyone, just how do they get?
It does.
yeah, yeah.
That's in there, Joe.
All right. Anything else on this? No.
Very good, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you to the whole committee.
The whole committee, yes. And I do want to I'm gonna pass around, this is just our last kind of item. If you have any changes, or if there's anything incorrect, because I know, I think Russ, you had said that like the number that was listed on the contact sheet was incorrect, so.
Yeah, well, it was correct, it's my home
Right,
number,
but not
though,
the
it's not
best,
textable.
not the best number, so, I'm just gonna.
I just want to confirm that information is correct.
Yes, if you have any changes, if you could just write them right in there.
Am I the only one
And
who
if-
still has home numbers versus cell numbers?
I have a home number, because that way,
I got rid
my-
of
Actually,
mine.
this-
well, because I need my kids to be able to dial
I know.
911, like, without breaking into a cell
That's
phone.
why we had one for a long time.
That's good.
So you said you want cell ones on here, not home?
No, whatever the best number
Okay.
is. No, I mean, I'm not gonna.
No, just don't assume the one that I usually use it's not my cell
Yeah,
number,
then you
so
can
people have said they sent me
Get all the
texts.
fun
'Cause
texts.
you're-
I know exactly.
You shouldn't be texting each other. Let me go through the right to know law.
There's a scam text
Sorry,
going
it's
around.
wrong.
Are you, really?
That
That's,
simplifies
yeah, it's so
the,
good. It's the second one. The
911
first one was the
stuff.
toll one
I
that
get it.
was
Oh, the
sent.
toll one, I was getting that all the
And
time.
this new one
Just
was
see
you have
how
an
much my
unpaid
name's stuck up. That's my
traffic ticket in
Oh,
the
yeah,
state of
Monday I
New
got that
Hampshire.
too.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it went
yeah.
out across the state. A lot of people got it.
Oh,
For me,
my
just
God.
use my,
Yeah.
I've got a town email address.
I thought part of what Russ and I
Because
were
I'm the
meeting with the other
moderator.
gentleman is.
That's the best
I knew
thing to
the
use for
survey
me.
group was
City
creating the
Hawkins at
survey.
Newmarket and
I thought what we were
Ames.gov.
meeting on is how we're getting it out.
Right.
Okay, is
Seems
that
like
gonna
we
be
just-
updated?
No, we're meeting to say,
Yeah.
hey,
Tony
how,
said it
what
just handed to you.
avenues can we do to advertise that this is out here?
Yeah.
We're
To
trying to,
advertise the work.
Go on the Facebook
committee
page.
and-
Go on the Facebook pages.
And he's gonna talk to you guys about what the firm can do for the committee.
Okay.
So if there's no other business, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
I have
Oh,
a question, I
okay.
should know this. But, texting one another, the communication between one member and another, whether it's texted or telephone or whatever, is not allowed.
It's not true.
It's not, no.
Well,
no.
that's what I just.
It's
you
not that
just-
it's
you
not
just-
allowed.
It's discoverable if there's certain things. So, yes, one-on-one can talk. One-on-one can't talk to, one can't talk to two, then talk to three, then talk to four, then talk to
No, I
five.
understand that, but you just said he couldn't text.
But you should be very aware of what you're texting, because of the fact that if somebody says, I wanna see any governmental records between
Right.
members, and that exists, then we have to then we turn it over.
Right, but that doesn't preclude it
but it's just you have to keep it and you have to.
Right, okay,
It's not illegal to text one another. You just have to be aware,
I get it.
just assume that it's gonna be subject to 91A.
Right.
Right, I
Just assume
totally
that.
got it, yeah,
So,
gotcha.
so
I'm
watch your
old-fashioned.
language
I like phones
Yep.
rather than text.
and keep it simple.
And discussions should be here, not via email, not,
Right.
yeah,
I totally get
yeah.
it, yeah, okay,
Just for everybody,
okay.
No reason for us to be afraid of any of this. It's just, you just need to be aware.
yeah.
Don't be
So-
stupid, right.
How many other?
Russ just reminded me that I skipped over the
Yeah,
communication.
just to let you know,
And I apologize.
we hounded Steve for a couple days, so we got out the thing on this meeting today, and we're meeting with PR, a firm, and Steve brought in 4:30 on Thursday in, I guess, your office or here or wherever to think about it, but I think it's a hugely complex thing that we just got into tonight on how do you get the information out and where do people look for things and how many people are gonna get surveys and, could be an
So,
interesting
so we agreed there's
discussion.
gonna be minutes of these subcommittee meetings of some kind.
Yeah.
When they convened, broadly what was discussed, and then when
If
they.
any
when
votes
they-
were taken.
When they convened.
And once again, I would really encourage folks to look at that whole agenda, because it talks about everything. It was their first
Yeah.
charter, and it talks
Yeah.
about ground level discussions on everything. It's really, really,
And someone is gonna circulate that link
Yep.
to us, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, send me the link and I'll put it in the meeting minutes.
Yep.
So people can, when you get the minutes, the link will be there, just click it. And that way people at home can watch it when we publish the minutes.
Okay.
Do I have to have my name Alvin?
No, you go ahead.
All right, that settles this.
Oh,
Motion to
damn.
adjourn.
With 5 minutes to spare.
Motion to adjourn's been made.
Is there a second?
Thank
Thank you. All in favor?
I would like to censure Alvin.
Chris, call down 1321 and say, take us off the air. And we didn't look, so don't have a conversation until you see us off the
I
air.
didn't even notice it said that.